I've been scripting my board game in Tabletop Simulator for 30 days now, and I wanted to share with you 5 things that I have learned. The first thing that I learned is how to use zones. Apart from using zones to identify parts on your board, you also want to use zones to identify your decks. And there are 2 reasons for this. The first reason is that the grid, which is what you would use otherwise, which right now for this deck is 5 BB something, is going to change when the deck breaks apart and comes back together. So if I spread out this deck and then we group it back together, the grid is now instead 9cc something. So if you would reference the deck grid, that would break as soon as the deck splits apart and comes back together. The second reason is that a deck can be empty, and that can then be identified by the zone being empty, which can be useful if you want to draw from a deck when the deck is empty. The best way to create zones is to draw them, and the best way to draw them is to come in real close and take the thing you want to draw a zone on and put it on 1/2 of the screen. And then when you draw, you select the top left corner first, and then because this is now on 1/2 of the screen, when you come to where you want the zone to end, you see these yellow lines very clearly. So it's easy to put them exactly where you want them to be, and then let go. And then this zone is going to be perfectly aligned to what you want it to be aligned to. If you would instead try to come in from the top, then when you move the camera, there's a risk the camera tilts a bit. And also when you draw now, the zone itself, it's going to obscure what you're trying to draw. So it's difficult to see where it's supposed to end, and also the zone can become slightly crooked because you moved the camera. The same goes when you're drawing zones to encapsulate a deck. You come in real close, you select zones, and then you keep it on 1/2 of the screen. You select the top left corner and you can drag down, and then you can see now that this yellow line goes up above the card, so you see that it's encapsulating it, and then you stop when you feel like you have enough padding. And that's now your zone that encapsulates this deck. This zone scripting is also very straightforward. You can get an object from a grid, and then you can iterate through all objects inside of that grid, which in this case is a zone, find everything which is a deck or a card, and that would then be your deck. That's everything about zones. Next up at number 2 is everything about tags. Tags is for groups of objects, not individual objects. If we need a reference to this exact token, for example, it's a lot better to just use that exact grid. But if you want to, for example, get all basement cards, or all character cards, or all encounter cards, that's what tags are for. When you have set up tags for groups of objects like this, cleanup phases are very easy to script. Essentially the logic here is loop over all objects. If they are cards and encounter cards, then put them in the encounter card archives. How do you figure out if they are encounter cards? Because they have the encounter tag. Tags are also useful for snap points, because snap points can be configured to work only with specific card types. This snap point only works with encounter cards. It doesn't work with basement cards. And this snap point only works with basement cards. It doesn't work with encounter cards. You can't tag an entire deck. If I would right click here and select that this is actually all supposed to be basement cards, and then I draw a card from here, that card isn't a basement card. That card is still only an office card. What was tagged was the deck as such, not all the cards in the deck. The easiest way that I found to tag all the cards in a deck is to simply spread the deck and then select everything and then add the tag. Number 3 is to add scripted snap points. This is the game before we added scripted snap points. Everything here is slightly off center, it's a bit crooked, the cards don't align perfectly, the padding between the character cards and the actual cards is slightly different for all players, and this is a setup where we added scripted snap points. Here everything is aligned perfectly, and it's visible when you show the snap points. These snap points are perfectly aligned, and that's because they were placed with a script. There is a helper function to place a snap point with position, rotation, and which tags should snap to it. Then there is a bunch of definitions for snap points to place, and then there is a loop that places all the snap points. The way this was achieved was that first the script to create all of the snap points was run, then the cards were manually placed in all of their snap point locations, and then the game was saved. After this was done, that's when the zones were drawn, so that the zones would align perfectly with the snap points, and the snap points were placed perfectly because they were placed with a script. The fourth thing is that you should not use the built-in editor. The built-in editor is good for very small things, but as soon as you want to script an entire game, I mean, it lags when you scroll through big files, and it has none of the features that an actual IDE has. I'm going to show you how to set up VS Code instead. You open VS Code, you go to extensions, you search for TTS, and you get this one. You don't want to get this one, or at least it didn't work for me. Once this is installed, Ctrl-Shift-P, TTS, get objects. When you run get objects for the first time, you will get a bunch of files. You can ignore everything in bundled. The code in objects is the code that matters, and these Lua files are what you're going to edit. Never rename the Lua files. I don't know exactly how it works, but my suspicion is that the name of the Lua file is what links it to the actual object inside Tabletop Simulator. If you rename these files, and I've tried, all sorts of things start to break. Don't rename the files. When you have done updates to your script, it's actually very easy to relaunch it in Tabletop Simulator. Ctrl-Shift-P, save and play, loading complete. The new scripts are now loaded. Here it's important that you first save whatever your setup is, because the loading complete means that it's going to load whatever you last loaded. If you actually want to save something in here, move something, then you have to make a new save. You also have to load this new save. Now, the loading complete is this new thing that you created. If we do some changes now in the script, and then Ctrl-Shift-P, save and play, it now loads the change we made correctly, that we moved the token down here. Last thing about VS Code, it's actually pretty clever. If you right-click something and go to script to open the scripting editor, the script for that object will open up in VS Code. So last thing, then number 5, you can hide scripts in small objects. Over here, I have a small pawn. And this pawn is where the script to place the snap points are. If you have scripted in Tabletop Simulator, I'm sure you can recognize that the global script very quickly gets very big. And only things that exist on the board can have scripts. With this strategy, you can hide a bunch of small things here, and then you can put scripts in those to handle these separate parts of your game that requires scripting. And global is the orchestrator for these objects and their scripts. So that's everything I have learned so far. That you want to use zones to identify decks, you use tags for groups of things, you script your snap points, you use VS Code, and then you can hide code in smaller objects to reduce the size of your files. I hope that documenting my first 30 days of struggling will help you scripting your game in Tabletop Simulator. The game that I'm scripting is a game called Blockminers that we have been working on for 7 years. Version 1.1 was released in 2024. Right now we are playtesting version 1.2 of Blockminers. If you want to playtest the game, then you can come join the Discord server. I hope to see you there. That's all I had. See you later. Bye bye.